Welcome to Retail Revelations, where we have the tough, unglamorous, but essential conversations where you get to listen to me and my guests dive into real truths about cannabis retail, what can help and what can hinder license holders. My name is Chelsea Mulligan. I am your host, also known as the Dispensary Whisperer. I have open managed or triaged over 80 licenses as a singular consultant and been in 120 licenses across the country. I was a founding team member of Focus, Foundation of Cannabis Unified Standards, and through our efforts, I got to work with legislators, regulators, FDA inspectors, and I was even fortunate enough to attend the United Nations CBD vote in Vienna in 2019. Since the pandemic, I've continued my operations and compliance consulting, both through receivership work as well as contract work with individual operators. I have a knack for cannabis operations and compliance management with an expertise in retail. And honestly, my soapbox is employee management. I enjoy giving them an environment to come thrive in, grow in, feel valued. And after 12 years in the legal cannabis industry, I'm honored to have gotten to interact with so many humans and be a part of their journey. And some of those amazing humans include Bill and Jeff from the Beard Bros. They have stellar products in multiple states and a true understanding of the cannabis industry. And I'm so honored to be a part of their media network and share some of my expertise and highlight some amazing humans. The amazing human that joins us today is Britni Tantalo, the president of NYCRA, which is the New York Cannabis Retail Association. She's a dispensary owner and a passionate advocate for equity cannabis in New York. Please share a little bit of your story, your background, your journey, anything you want us to know, Britni.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I actually started consuming cannabis very young, in my mid-teen years, which led me to eventually selling cannabis. Unfortunately, I had experienced targeting, racial profiling, being ripped out of my car and searched, which led me to cannabis conviction. That cannabis conviction actually qualified me for my dispensary, Flower City Dispensary. New York had the CARD program, or the conditional adult use retail dispensary license, and they gave the first retail licenses to CARD. You had to be justice involved or a relative or spouse that was justice involved and showed 2 years of profitable business experience. So, that conviction, gave me my dispensary ultimately. Later in life, I connected with Jason, who is now my husband, who has an extensive background in the legacy market, growing cannabis, distributing it, for majority of his life. So when we had connected, that's what we did. We grew on a commercial scale and, sold cannabis. That's how we survived. Around 2014, we really wanted to transition away from that. And we saw other states going legal. And we had started Medavega Corporation, which is a wholesale distributor of indoor grow equipment. And we started with one product, and we drove up and down the East Coast, and we sold that product to brick and mortar hydroponic grow shops. And we built this relationship, and we expanded our product line and ended up selling our products throughout the country as far as the West Coast. In 2021, we decided to actually open a brick and mortar grow shop in our local community. We really wanted to teach people how to grow their own medicine. New York during that time had just went medical. So it was really important to teach people how to take control of that. So we started to share our knowledge and background with our local community. I also currently am the president of the New York Cannabis Retail Association, which is the largest retail trade organization in New York State. I also sit as an advisory board member to the Cannabis Means Business Expo in New York. I sit on the board for the Asian Cannabis Roundtable, as I'm half South Korean, so I'm very proud of that. So cannabis has just really been such a big part of my life. And, I'm so grateful to be able to do it professionally, openly, and, help others.
Thank you for sharing. I don't like to say I love your story, but I do. For the social equity people that have experienced being ripped out of their cars having a charge, going to jail, whatever that may be. I always hate saying I love that they get a license out of that because it seems like something you shouldn't say, but I'm glad something good at least came out of something that never should have happened in the first place. Um, so I remember you telling me that, when New York announced its program, and I even knew from following New York's kind of marketing and how they were talking about their system, and they were very focused on justice involved applicants, which no state had done before. So it was a really bold step forward. Tell me how the initial expectations that they put forwards compared to the actual rollout that has happened for your, is it card or cord? Card?
Hard.
Card.
Yeah. Yeah, the initial expectations were extremely high for card applicants. We were promised turnkey dispensaries. So that was huge, right? I mean, to have a dispensary built out for you, low interest loans and grants would be provided. I mean, really something that harmed us so much. It felt like we were going to have this opportunity for generational wealth now. Reality was much different. We did not get turnkey dispensaries. We did not have access to those low interest loans and grants. And we were met with a handful of lawsuits and a weak infrastructure. So myself and many others would say that the rollout was a complete disaster. And unfortunately harmed not only me, but many other people during it.
Before that rollout, um, as you guys kind of got awarded your licenses and you were going through the process, let's talk a little bit about how the New York cannabis community came together. How did it start? What impact did it have? How did it help you get through those chaotic days? How did it help those that have come from the legacy market and may need some help with things like SOPs? A lot of people don't even know what that means.
Right. Yeah. I mean, our infrastructure in New York was extremely weak in the beginning. The communication between the different segments of the supply chain was non-existent. And the communication with our state agency, the Office of Cannabis Management, and applicants was really fragmented. So this was like extremely difficult time for card applicants throughout the state. I mean, actually the entire supply chain. And especially during the time when that first lawsuit hit New York. Myself, my husband Jason, some of our current NYCRA board members, and some of our current members, we started talking. We started to meet up, have conversations like, what did you hear? What's going on? Just about regulations and factors impacting our market. So it was like a chain reaction. It got so big, we shifted to a WhatsApp. During this time, we were known as the New York Card Coalition. So it was all of us card really having conversation and trying to gain some stability and control over what was going on, because I mean, there was lawsuits left and right. There were so many moving parts, but that talking went a step further. It turned into sharing resources. It turned into sharing business plans and SOPs and things like that cost thousands of dollars, because I believe that during this time, everybody wanted to see cannabis move forward. They wanted to see it win. We wanted to see each other win. You know, it really humanized us. And that's why we always go by this mantra of, collaboration over competition. It wasn't a time for us really to be against each other. It was a time to work together if we were going to really ever get to the realization of opening our dispensaries.
I love when a community actually acts like a community, right? It's not monetarily based. It's not, well, what does this serve me? What does it do for me? You just became a community and actually collaborated, which is amazing. Um, on that note, we've talked a lot about legacy operators and small scale and your community. But there are large illicit operators. So, can you walk us through why that's so critical and why that narrative needs to be understood by the public?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that New York is well known for the large amount of unlicensed shops. as a retailer, I think our major concern is not the street level man or woman selling cannabis on the corner. What our worry and threat is are these highly capitalized businesses that have infrastructure and actual retail physical locations that are sort of posing as illegal. They do not follow the compliance of marketing regulations, product regulations, and safety. And they have the money to hire attorneys, right? To sue, to reopen. These are the threats to legal operators. When you look at the street level, NYCRA and myself and many others try to focus on transitioning them by investing in them, right? Try to give them access to resources so they can enter into the cannabis space and have a viable business. Never to recriminalize somebody or cause that harm, because you have to remember, most of us, if not all of us, at least in the card program, we are justice involved, right? And so we know that feeling, to your point, of having been ripped out of a car or people go to prison. So we don't want to cause that same harm. We want to transition them and actually make it accessible for them to create generational wealth from it.
Sorry, I was muted. You have advocated so hard for women and people of color in cannabis. And while we are nowhere near it being where it needs to be, what have you found to be effective to move the needle with your voice? And what do you feel still needs to be screamed louder for the people in the back?
Now, for me, what's really been effective is being resilient. Truly not allowing other people to silence my truth just because it's not theirs. I am somebody that tries to find opportunities for other women and people of color. That's really important, not just looking for pathways for yourself, because I see the bigger picture of how we can amplify things if more of us are seen or more of us are heard. So sometimes you have to take that back seat. And I hold a lot of pride in that. I think what needs to be said louder is, just be a real one, be the same person you are to somebody's face is when they're not in the room. Find those opportunities, open up doors for other people. I think we have to live by the words that we say, or we will never, ever see that true change. And, I see more now than ever, especially with women and people of color from different minority groups, trying to amplify our voices together and kind of breaking those barriers, because cannabis is one of those things that touches everybody, right? And differently. And being able to be represented in cannabis and by who you are, I think everybody deserves that.
I love that. And you're right. Even the people who don't understand if they're using it medicinally, or people that don't use cannabis, it does touch them in one way or another at this point in our lifetime. So you are both a parent and a business owner and a leader in your community. Your reality includes navigating school drop-offs. I luckily don't have to do that. I get to homeschool on the couch. So I commend you for the anxiousness that is school drop-off line. You also get to navigate state regulations. What does balancing that look like? You're a mom, you're a wife, you're Britni yourself, then you're Britni, the business owner. What does that all look like for you actually balancing that?
Yeah, balancing that work life and mom life is probably the most difficult part of my life. There's mornings where I'm rushing to take my son who's in pre-K to his field trip at the art gallery. And then I'm leaving there to rush to the dispo so I can check on my employees, check the vault, check my emails, make sure everything's running, to jump on a Zoom for a NYCRA board meeting or a cannabis conference call, and really trying to be out the door by 5-6 o'clock because I want to be there for dinner, bath, bedtime, and get my kids ready for school. And it's crazy. It's difficult and defeating at times, but I really, truly love my life. My kids and my husband, they're my world, but so are the people that I serve in NYCRA. And so are the employees that work in my dispensary. For me, anything that I care about, I will make time for, and I will make it work. It's really hard, but I do it because my heart is in it, and it's things that I love and people I love.
It's definitely a balancing act, but you're right, you do it because you love it. And to me, there's not another option. When people are like, how do you juggle it all? And I'm like, what's the other option? To be stagnant and not grow and not show up? Like, yeah, no. um,
No.
so we've talked a lot about challenges. I want to pivot to advice. So for someone entering the industry, which we can focus on New York specifically, or you can make it just a general advice, what would you say are your top 3 things that those people should look out for so they get it right?
Okay, top 3 things. First, make sure that you are following the regulations in your state for cannabis. The regulations change all the time and they greatly impact the operations of your business. So make sure you are staying on top of that. Second, definitely, build a solid network in your community. Working with others with good intentions will serve you well. I really believe that. And lastly, probably to be financially prepared. Whatever your first financial forecast is, 10x it, 20x it, 30x it, because this is an emerging industry and it has a lot of volatility, and there's going to be economic factors, outliers, anomalies that occur that are extremely capital intensive, and you just have to be able to understand and be willing to know that ahead of time.
Agreed on the 10x. Um, whatever you think you're going to need, I was gonna say 5x, but no, I think 10x is a safer bet. You would rather have excess than
Yeah,
not enough in this industry.
yeah, absolutely.
Now you've given advice. Tell me something you wish someone would have told you at the start of this. Something that you would have saved you time, money, heartache, whatever that is.
Yeah, probably that, the promises made for the card program, really wouldn't be fulfilled. I don't think anybody would have anticipated, that much far in the other direction. Another would be the amount of time that the application process took to realizing your dispensary opening. Most of us didn't think it would happen right away. I mean, it's a state program, but it took me over 2 years to actually cut the ribbon and open our doors. And I could have never have anticipated that. And there's still card that are just securing locations to open that, applied when I did. So it's been years for some people. I think if some of us knew that, maybe we would have waited and saved ourselves some time and money. Another is that you would really have to risk it all. And that's coming from not only a financial perspective, but a mental and emotional perspective. It puts a lot of strain on you, your mental health, your physical health, but then those around you that are a part of your life. And that's something you don't think about, when you're rose-colored glasses, getting a turnkey dispensary. And really, that money can change people in this game. And that, you really have to remember that someday when we're all long and gone, that it's not the money that people remember. What people remember about you and your legacy is how you treated them, what you did for your community and what was selfless. So, these are things you find out much later in your journey about, the program, the environment, and the people.
I want to ask a little bit of a different question than we originally talked about. But tell me about that 2-year journey from the time you applied to the time you got to cut that ribbon. What would you say some of the hardest parts were, or parts that you maybe didn't expect? Like you knew it wouldn't be there 3 months after you got awarded it, but you didn't expect it to take 2 years. What would you have done differently, or what happened that you didn't expect?
I guess, I'd never applied for a state program before. So I sort of went into it sort of trusting the state agency. And a lot of instances I felt a little misguided, pulled all over the place. My husband and I in particular, we held a lease for a year without a license because we were advised to do so. We were advised that if you had a retail location, you would get priority. And, this isn't just me. These are people throughout New York State. I mean, who has money to burn in a trash can, because that's basically what we did. And that's just one of the many things. I mean, we talk a lot about financial harm because, that's important. But just the mental and emotional, I am a mom to a 5 and 7-year-old. So how I feel impacts them. And there's just so many things of that nature that I wasn't prepared for or didn't expect. I didn't think this program would have caused so much strife, just in my own feelings and how I felt every day, and that's how that gets projected. And the worry of, am I ever going to get one? Is all this, where's this money going to go? It's going to bankrupt us. All these fears were not just something that was, for a week. This is something that myself and many of us lived for years. So it's undescribable, but to the point about the community coming together, I mean, that's the humanizing part. When you see people, potentially losing their homes, losing their farms, losing their retirement savings, losing their marriages, losing their lives because of the constraint of chasing legal in New York put on them. It's just, something that you could have never have predicted or never thought you would sign up for. And even though it's hard, I do believe that we're headed in a greater upward trajectory. But we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge what me and many other people went through. So I appreciate you, asking me that, Chelsea.
I appreciate how transparent you are willing to be and kind of sharing your story and the experience within the New York market. I want to briefly touch on the New York market as it stands today, because we've talked about the past and kind of how you've gotten to where you are. From the new agency structures to changing market rules, what are you seeing now that gives you hope or shows progress? Either one.
Yeah, I've seen actually pretty good progress in New York. The OCM agency, the communication has gotten much better with our invested stakeholders. Resources and action has been taken into increasing staffing, which was a huge weakness. So that has definitely improved and made things easier to be expedited. Our current executive director, Felicia Reed, has been wonderful in being present not only downstate, but in upstate New York, meeting with invested stakeholders to analyze and talk about what's going on in our markets and what's impacting us, and then taking that back and following up. That's something that, we didn't have before. We didn't have that direct communication. I feel her background coming from a previous state agency, as well as having a personal connection with the plant, has shined through in her leadership, right? And helped New York sort of feel more connected to agency, which we needed that. Retail dispensaries are opening. We had all these licenses, but nobody was open. Every day I'm hearing about retail dispensaries opening, and that's exciting. That growth is there. That bottleneck is opening up. And, New York has over 500 brands and growing. If you look at other markets that are legal, we've surpassed them. So it really truly shows the tenacity, the resilience of the New York market and what cannabis can be. So the progress and hope is absolutely there. But, let's be clear, there is a lot of work still ahead of us. We have our pitfalls, but at least I can say that I feel optimistic about heading towards a sustainable market.
Last question.
Sure.
What are you most proud of in your journey?
Honestly, I'm most proud of the work that the NYCRA board members and its members have done for the past 3 years. From advocating for our families and our businesses to standing in solidarity during difficult times. I mean, the resilience of retailers is just amazing. It's not only admirable, but definitely something to be proud of. For the future, I could only hope that we would continue to collaborate and build and support each other to success.
Awesome. Thank you. As we close out, go ahead and share with the listeners where they can find you: Instagram, LinkedIn, website, all the places so they can support your work and your business.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Britni_Tantalo. You can check out our dispo, Flower City Dispensary. It's at Flower City Dispo on IG. You can check out NYCRA at NY Cannabis Retail Association on IG. And definitely check out NYCRA's website, www.NYCRaCannabisRetailAssociation.org.
I so appreciate you being here, Britni. It was a pleasure to get to interact with you last year. It was CWCBE and is now CMB. Super excited to see you this year, and it's just been a pleasure to be able to highlight your story and chat with you. So thank you for being here. Thank you everybody for listening. My name is Chelsea Mulligan, the Dispensary Whisperer. Please subscribe to the Beard Bros Media Network YouTube channel to listen to me and the 7 other amazing hosts. You can find me on LinkedIn as Chelsea Mulligan, Instagram is the Dispensary Whisperer, or chelseamulligan.com. Make sure to follow Beard Bros Farms on Instagram. And if you're in California, Missouri, Massachusetts, please make sure you try their amazing RSO Dablicator. And in California, they have awesome RSO tinctures. And while we all wish we could sesh with the Beard Bros live and in person on a daily, unfortunately, we all can't. So make sure to sign up for their Beard Bros Friday Sesh Live newsletter so you get all the cannabis news. And they are having a Friday Sesh Live in July that some of you will be able to attend. So thanks for joining us and have a great day.